On behalf of Father Johnny Go, founding Dean of the Gokongwei Brothers School of Education and Learning Design, good morning and welcome to Choosing Hope, Stories from Homeboy Industries. Before anything else, we would like to thank Father Bobby Yap and the Ateneo de Manila University for hosting us here at the Hyundai Hall. We would also like to thank Elaine Can and Integra Wellness for being the conduits who made this event possible, for inviting and bringing to the Philippines our speaker, Fr Greg Boyle, founder of Homeboy Industries, and his homies, Enrique and Larry. This morning, after a short prayer and the introduction of our speaker, we will have an hour to listen to Father Boyle's stories from Homeboy Industries. We will then have a 15-minute coffee break and return to our seats by 10:30 a.m. A chance for a dialogue, a Q&A session facilitated by Rico Gonzalez, co-founder and managing director of the social enterprise incubator Exchange, will then follow. We will be able to ask Father Greg and his homies, Enrique and Larry, our questions. This morning, we will be hearing the words homeboy and homie many times. It may be good to start with an etymology of these two words. There are many theories about the origin of homeboy and its shortened form, homie. But a plausible one is this. It is a combination of hometown and boy. A homeboy, then, is somebody you know from your old hometown, a friend whose home you may have visited before, someone you would invite to your home now. Part of homeboy and homie is the word home. Now, this may date me, but for Diana Ross, when she thinks of home, she thinks of a place where there's love overflowing. This, though, does not take away the possibility that in a home, there may also be tears overflowing. But home is also where someone wipes away your tears. In Filipino, home is tahanan, kung saan ka pinapatahan, where they sit with you and put their arms around you until your eyes are dry. Home is not just a place you happen to find. Home is something you make. A more modern song about home is from Philip Phillips. We will be listening to it in a few minutes for our opening prayer. I think its words speak not only of home, but can also accompany us this morning as we reflect with Father Greg Boyle. Father Greg is the author of the 2010 New York Times bestseller, Tattoos on the Heart, The Power of Boundless Compassion. In today's world, boundless compassion is often an unfamiliar road. In our prayer, we will hear this song. Hold on to me as we go, as we roll down this unfamiliar road. We will be challenged by what we hear from Father Greg as he shares about the power of radical kinship and extravagant tenderness, which he wrestled with in his second and third books. But as the song will comfort us, don't pay no mind to the demons that will fill you with fear. And yes, kinship and tenderness can be scary. Your own doubts and insecurities may drag you down, but listen to the song. If you get lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone, because I'm going to make this place your home. The song starts with words in Arabic and then in Hebrew, because this version is sung by young Palestinians and Israeli Jews who are trying to build a home together in the Holy Land. We may remain seated as we listen and we pray.
البيت بيت أبوه شلي بغنا شلي شلي شفا البيت بيت أبوه كان نحن بأخار وأهلا بالحبايب شرفوه Hold on to me As we roll down this unfamiliar road, and although this way is stringing us along, just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home. Settle down, it'll all be clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear. Trouble, it might drag you down. If you're lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home. Settle down, it'll all be clear. Ooh, don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear. Trouble, it might drag you down. If you're lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
Don't pay no mind to the demons that will fill you with fear. Trouble, it might drag you down, but if you get lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home. Lord, may we find a temporary home here in Hyundai Hall this morning, and may we leave inspired to make a home for others. We make a sign of our faith in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. From 1986 to 1992, our speaker this morning served as pastor of Dolores Mission. At that time, the poorest Catholic parish in Los Angeles with the highest concentration of gang activity in the city. Law enforcement tactics and criminal justice policies relied on suppression and mass incarceration to end gang violence. But our speaker led his parish and community to adopt a radical approach: treat gang members as human beings. In 1988, they started what would eventually become Homeboy Industries, which employs and trains former gang members in a range of social enterprises: Homeboy Bakery, Homeboy Groceries, Homeboy Silkscreen and Embroidery, and Homegirl Cafe and Catering, just to name a few. Homeboy Industries also provides critical services to thousands of individuals who walk through its doors every year seeking a better life. The organization's holistic approach supports around 10,000 men and women a year as they work to overcome their pasts, reimagine their futures, and break the intergenerational cycles of gang violence. Our speaker has received the California Peace Prize and has been inducted into the California Hall of Fame. He received the University of Notre Dame's 2017 Leitare Medal, the oldest honor given to American Catholics. Homeboy Industries was the recipient of the 2020 Hilton Humanitarian Prize validating 32 years of its founder's vision and work. Most recently, he was one of the recipients of the 2024 Presidential Medal of Freedom, the United States' highest civilian honor. Former U.S. President Barack Obama has named Father Boyle a champion of change. A champion of change. But to his homies, he's simply Father G. Before we hear from Father G, he told me that we will hear from his homies, Enrique and Larry. Brothers and sisters, please welcome them with a round of applause.
Hello, hello. How's everybody doing? My name's Enrique Sanchez Jr., and this is my story. So I was born June 24th, 1989, in White Memorial, which is in East LA, right down the street from where Greg Boyle had his church. I was born to my mother, which is Veronica Cortez, and Enrique Sanchez Duran. They're both migrated from Mexico to East LA, which was Lincoln Heights, is where I grew up at. Growing up, my dad was in and out of prison, and my mom was always visiting him. And I would go from prison to prison up and down California, and then come back home and be in the streets, because we lived on the main block where my dad grew up, and all his brothers, he had 6 brothers and 1 sister, and they were all from the same gang that my dad was from. And as well as my mom, she had a brother from the same gang as my dad's brothers and my dad. So growing up, gangs was normal to me. And I didn't see nothing wrong with it. I just thought it was normal, you know. I would hang out on the block with them, see them do drug deals, see them run from the cops, the helicopter. All that was normal to me. So as I started getting older, I started to realize, like, man, this is like, people would tell me, why do I do this? Why do I run the streets and all that? And I'll tell them, well, this is all I know. I mean, I've been surrounded by this gang my whole life. My dad in and out of prison. And I used to tell him, like, I go visit my dad, and I like that, you know. I like seeing him, in, like, not like seeing him in prison, but seeing that lifestyle, you know. Like, I thought it was, once again, normal. And I would always tell myself, like, man, I wonder what it looks like behind them doors. You know, and I was like, so as I was getting older, that was my mind, like, man, one day I want to go there, but who would think like that? Just someone that grew up in that neighborhood or in the streets like that. And so I started getting, my dad started doing more time. He'll get out for a couple months and go right back. And I'll just be with my mom until one day my mom got shot. And I was out in the street, no one could find me. So my uncle ended up finding me, so I ended up staying with my grandma. So my mom was out of work, and I was living at my grandma's house. And my grandma would just tell me, like, look, Junior, your mom just got shot. Your dad's in prison. I mean, I worry for you. All I ask is for you to do good in school. So I said, okay, Grandma, I'll do that for you. So I would do good in school. From 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I'll do my studies. But after school was when the bad things came in, you know. I would run around with all my friends and all that, and all my grandma wanted to see was good grades, and I would bring her good grades. And so I graduated from high school with a 4.0. A 4.0 is all A's. And so right after high school, I went to LA Trade Tech to be an electrical engineer. So once again, I'll go to school in the morning, and after school, back to my normal activities, you know. So, and I go to my normal activities, and then I enrolled into Mount Sac in Pomona to do my general ed. So I'll make my morning be my trade tech, my midday will be the streets, and my night will be my other college education. So, but the thing that was messing me up was running the streets, because to me that was normal, and I felt like I had to do that. So in my first semester in Mount Sac, in my second semester in LA Trade Tech, I picked up a serious crime. and ended up in LA County Jail. I ended up in LA County Jail fighting my case for over 2 years. I went to trial, and when I went to trial, my trial lasted 2 months. And after those 2 months, I got a not guilty verdict. And when I was in LA County Jail, I would tell God, like, please, God, like, let me come home. Like, if you know I did this crime, leave me here. But if you know I didn't, let me go home. So he let me go home. So when I went to the streets, I was out in the streets, and the same detectives that got me, they pinned me for another serious crime because I had beat them in that case. And now I'm back in the county. I bailed out and lasted another week, bailed out, and I came back out to the streets, and I just told myself, you know what, I'm going to start a family. But I started a family, and I started doing good, but once again, living that normal life, to, like I said, the streets was really, really normal to me, and I kept doing that, and it led me right back to jail. But this time, my kids were involved. The same detectives that I had beat in those prior serious crimes got me again. But this time, he hit me where it hurt. He took my kids. So I didn't know what to do, and they had told me to go to Homeboys to take some classes for parenting, and they'll assist me with my child custody case. So I went to Homeboys, and I let them know what was going on, and they assisted me. Homeboy Industries is right down the street from where I grew up. When I was young, they would help us out on summer with jobs. So my grandma would take us, me and my other cousins, and we'll get jobs there, and we'll pick up a little bit of money and whatever extra activities we were doing on the side, And so I went to Homeboy Industries. I did my parenting classes. I got a lot of letters of support, and the good thing is that after fighting my case, I got my kids back. But I got convicted for one of that serious crime, and they gave me 9 years in prison. So Homeboy Industries, before I turned myself in, let me know that once I came out of prison, that they'll have the doors open for me. So as soon as I came out of prison, I went straight back to Homeboys. And that's the best thing I could have done in my life, because now I stand here in front of all you people talking about my life story. So so now I'm back at Homeboys, and I started off in tattoo removal, and I worked my way up to youth navigator. A youth navigator is a mentor to youth that are transitioning from juvenile halls, placements, and that were in the street that live the same lifestyle as me. So now I deal with a lot of these youth, and I love that job, because I'm able to relate. These kids, they live the same lifestyle as me. So if I could sit there and tell them, I can't tell them what to do, but I could give them advice, and it feels good when they sit there and listen to me. So I really, really enjoy my life doing that. And now I barely just got promoted to workforce for the youth. So now I sit here helping these youth get jobs, and I would never thought I'll have a job, because I was so used to just running the streets and making money in the streets. To me, that was normal. Like, I keep talking about normal because in the community I grew up in with my family background, like, that's all we knew. None of my uncles worked. Nobody worked. Everybody just survived off the streets. So I was there about April 2021, and I had a father. My father lived in Mexico, but I couldn't go visit him due to the fact that I was on parole. So after 12 months, my parole officer took off my parole, and I was allowed to go to Mexico. I went to go see my dad in Mexico for 3 months. And one day I got a call that my dad was missing. I went to Mexico to go look for my dad, and the same people that got my dad got me. I've been home over a year this time. They sent me to prison in Mexico. I was in prison in Mexico for 6 months for no reason, just for going to go over there and look for my dad, and my dad, I never found my dad's body, and and it hurts, but I just got to keep pushing because I have kids, and Homeboys was there to support me when I came home once again, and Homeboys is like a blessing to me. I'm able to work around people that live the same lifestyle as me. We're all able to relate. I don't feel uncomfortable. We got directors there that are ex-gang members, and they're our role models. So, like for myself, one of the directors, his name is Steve, and every time I see Steve, I look at him and I tell myself, if he could do it, why can't I do it? So that's the beauty of that place, that everybody there once walked that life. It makes it a lot easier for all of us because we all support each other. And I'm so happy that I got opportunity to come and talk about my life. And thank you guys for listening, and I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys enjoyed my life story.
Welcome. You guys made us feel real good about being here. It's a little more exciting for me because my great-grandpa was Filipino. So it just gives me an experience that I've been wanting to do for years, For myself, I came from a family. My mom had 13 brothers and sisters. My grandpa had 13 kids. It was generational gang members. We just grew up like that, it was a normal part of life for us. My dad's side, it was the same thing. Everybody was involved, cousins, aunts, everybody. And growing up in this life, everything just seemed the right way to live. Everything outside of it just seemed strange, For us, this was a normal way to be. For me, it was more like tribal. It wasn't because I wanted to belong. It wasn't because I was being bullied on or anything like that. For me, I just grew up around a family where the stories were told. I was watching my dad in the rumble in the parking lots and, just being around gang members all the time. Where I go to parties at the house and it was like a gang party. Where my grandpa would be on one side with his homeboys and my dad and my uncles would be on the other side with the younger guys, and we'd just be in the middle just trying to imitate them, So as I grew up, I hear all these stories about these fights and stuff, and I couldn't wait to get of age so I could just do the same thing, Eventually, I found myself in prison and ended doing 6 years. No rehabilitation, no nothing. They didn't teach us nothing, so I just came out doing the same thing. I ended up coming out for 8 months, and then I caught myself a life sentence. I thought all hope was lost. I didn't expect to come home, nothing like that. But then 20 years out of 22 years I did, it was all maximum security. I eventually met a woman that told me, hey, Larry, there's hope. We don't have to be like this. Life is better than this. There's something out there for you to live for, When you do that much time, I told you I grew up in a gang-affiliated family, and I thought I came into this life with open eyes. I didn't know the consequences. I knew this life came and prison came hand in hand, but nobody ever told me the whole story. I don't know about the sacrifices. I don't know about the things that I was really going to give up because I was so naive. I was young. I didn't know no better. Is that no one taught me this, So when you do that much time, you find yourself a lot of time in solitary because you're getting into stuff in there. And when you're sitting in that cell with nothing, all you got to do is just reflect on your life, and you gain a little bit of insight into it. Your perspective starts to change. You start to read books. You start to educate yourself. You watch shows like PBS. You read about true stories about people who change their lives and everything that, I didn't know how big the world really was. Sometimes we could be free and we could find ourselves to a small area, but we imprison ourselves even out here in the open. Start to see it was so much world, and I was cheating myself for all these experiences, all these new things, But what could I do with it now that I was in prison? I was fortunate enough to find somebody to help me find that. She said, don't give up hope, man. Try. Keep on going. You could do this, man. You could come home. You sort of listen to it. You're not really sure. You know what I mean? Like, all right, we'll give it a try. you never know what God has in store for you. You know, sometimes God touches your lives in different ways and He tries to teach you things, you know. But one thing I learned too is about living this life, man. It's like sometimes we think when we do, our actions only affect us. When in reality, our lives touch so many other people. It's like a ripple effect. Everything we do touches, whether it's a victim's family or our own family at that. When I was at 22 years ago, when I last seen my mom and dad, they were robust, active. I come home, man, I think of all the time I cheated them. They were just waiting for me to come home, you know. Now they're all older, they're moved slow. Thank God I'm there to help them now, you know. My kids grew up without me. My youngest daughter, she's 29 right now. I've only been out 11 months of her life before I came home. So I treated her for a father, you know. No father and daughter dance. Many days of my children crying on the phone waiting for me to come home. Most of the people I love that were close to me and dear to me, I came home and everybody's gone. Just say like 1/4 of the people I loved are there that left. They either passed away. I come home to a place that I was trying to earn my respect. And I come home a stranger because everybody that knew me is either dead, in prison, or moved away. I lost a lot. And none of this I knew was going to happen. Who would have known? I know now. But by some miracle, somehow, I found my way home. And there's no one place I can die. It has to be God, you know. Because, like, but what do you do after that much time, right? You come home, you know, all you know is this life. You know, yeah, I took my self-study classes, try to rehabilitate myself. But, you know, you can't just, even with all that, just to come home, where's there to go except back to the neighborhood, right? But my wife told me, hey, man, you know what? You don't have to go back there. There's another place. There's some place that'll help you, that'll be there for you. I said, who's going to be there for me? She said, hey, man, you know, she works at Homeboy Industries herself. So she drew me in. And sure enough, man, like, you know, you go places, where they try to help you, but they can't relate to you. Not like Homeboy Industries. I went to a place that was like home for me. You know, where people welcome me with open arms, where they can relate to me, where they've been, where I've been. And I can't begin to tell you what a difference it makes to talk to people who genuinely care about you because they know what you're going through, that they've been there, that they walked those steps. And it's just such a good feeling because, you know, where I was at, they issue you on your way. They give you a couple bucks. After 22 years, what do you do with a couple bucks? I mean, I didn't even have a pair of boxers when I came home. So, you know, going somewhere where I was so welcome and having a place where I could be okay, and them help me along the whole way till I figure out what I wanted to do. I can't even begin tell you what a godsend that was. You know, after being there so long, I was fortunate enough to get hired by one of a school district that is associated with Homeboys. And like my friend before me, I work with the youth. Oh man, what talk about karma, right? Talk about being able to find something that's meaningful, something that like touches your heart. Because these kids, man, every one of these kids, man, I just like look at myself in the mirror. You know, sometimes I find myself telling myself, only if I knew then what I know now, how different my life could have been. So when I look at these kids, I say, wait, man, I can't change the past, man, but maybe I can change their future and help guide them and give them the advice that I wish I was given. Tell them what they have to lose. Not just about glorifying that life. No, it wasn't about that. It was about telling them what it leads to, what comes along with it, what they're really going to give up if they continue to choose to go on in that direction. And let me tell you, man, when you catch them and you really got them and you see them drawing in like this, you hear you, then you know you got them. And even if they don't listen to you, then you're planting the seeds for their future. Hopefully it just takes root and just see them grow to be able to change their life. It's rewarding in a way that I can't even tell you. Like it's like a healing experience. I can't even be. It's just it's a wonderful place to be. I'm just so thankful for Homeboys because without them, I don't know where I'd be. More likely probably either dead or back where I came from because I had nowhere else to go. The people there, they touch you in a way that I don't think anybody else could touch you. You know, at least for myself. I can only speak for myself, right? But I'm just so grateful to be there. Thank you for your time. Here's Fr Greg Boyle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh my gosh, I get the curtain. Well, thank you for your hospitality. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, my Jesuit brothers. Thank you for the kind introduction and beautiful prayer. Father Bobby, yes, he didn't have gray hair the last time I saw him, which was like 30 years ago in London. Thank you, Larry and Junior, for traveling here. We're totally sleep deprived, so, but it's the hospitality that we've experienced has been extraordinary. And the day won't ever come when I have more courage, or I am more noble, or I'm closer to God than you two gentlemen. So thank you for being here with me. You mentioned that Presidential Medal of Freedom. A homie texted me when he heard about it, and he said, "Hey, I heard you got a presidential pardon or some shit." Yes, that's something like that. And anyway, I look at all of you, and it makes me think of what Martin Luther King used to say about church. He said, it's not the place you've come to, it's the place you go from. And the same could be said of our gathering here this morning, that after all the rains have subsided, that this little moment is not the place you've come to, it's the place you go from. And you go from here to imagine something wildly different than perhaps what we've been used to. You go from here to imagine a circle of compassion, and then imagine nobody standing outside that circle. And so we inch our way out to the margins, because that's the only way they're ever going to get erased, is if we stand out at them, if we become proximate to the folks on the margins. And we stand with a particularity. We stand with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless. We stand with those whose dignity has been denied and those whose burdens are more than they can bear. You get to go from here to stand with the easily despised and the readily left out, with the demonized, as that song so beautifully articulated. You get to stand with the demonized so that the demonizing will stop, and to stand with the disposable so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. So we go to the margins and the circle widens, and we create a community of kinship such that God might recognize it, which of course is God's dream come true, that you may be one. And you go to the margins and you brace yourselves, because people will accuse you of wasting your time there. But the prophet Jeremiah writes, "For in this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing." And you become proximate to the folks at the margins, and other voices get heard. I think probably none of that makes any damn sense at all, except for the fact that we want to stay anchored in the God we actually have, the God who loves us without measure and without regret. That's the only way going to the margins makes any sense at all. And so we're always in search of a God that's more expansive and more spacious. We don't want to settle for a puny God, which is kind of, all of us raised Catholic sort of had that experience, truthfully, where God was kind of tiny. Richard Rohr says, yeah, of course, we're created in God's image, but he says it's equally true that our image of God creates us. And so we don't want to settle for something less than this God who loves us without measure and without regret. I had a spiritual director many years ago, and he said, you know, we need a better God than the one we have. He was a Jesuit. But of course he's right, because we kind of get ourselves locked in. Meister Eckhart, who was a mystic and a theologian, and who died, whatever it was, 1328 or something. And he used to say, it's a lie, any talk of God that doesn't comfort you. We don't really believe that so much because we think God is mainly doing this and disappointed, you know. And so how do we get beyond that sense? Anne Lamott, who's a writer in the States and a friend, and she says, you know you've created God in your own image when God hates the same people you do, you know, so, which is a good caution, because you want to catch yourself. You want to always believe, as St. Ignatius of Loyola says, the God who is always greater. How do you stay anchored in that God? Meister Eckhart he was kind of put in the penalty box just before he died, and they ended up condemning him after he had died, a year after he had died. But he was kind of always proposing a God that was intimate and tender. And that was at odds with the church, because the church felt that God needed to be distant and way out there. And that was the kind of the God who put people in the pews. But he felt that God was saying, approach, come closer. And that's the God we actually have. But we need to kind of, as Ignatius also says, take care to keep always before your eyes God. But as long as the God stays spacious and wide open, the God who's too busy loving us to have any time left to be disappointed. So for 40 years I've worked with gang members, and so I would go to every single detention facility. You know, there were actually 25 of them that I went on a rotating basis to celebrate the Eucharist. And juvenile halls, we had a lot of juvenile halls, probation camps for juveniles, jails, also was a chaplain in prison. But I was kind of always on a rotating, every weekend I would go. And I remember I was in San Fernando, a juvenile hall, and there was like 300 gang members there for Mass, and we were in a gym, and they were all sitting on folding chairs. And I had my alb on and my stole, and I was sitting up on a little kind of a raised platform. And they give you these sheets that they give to all the kids, and the readings are in English and in Spanish so that they know what's going on. And so, you know, when you preside, sometimes you close your eyes and you want to listen to the word proclaimed. And so I was sitting in my chair, and a homie came up to do the first reading from the Old Testament. And I had my eyes closed, and I'm listening to the word. And then the next kid, a gang member from the crowd, came up, and he is doing the responsorial psalm. But there's a kind of overabundance of confidence in his voice somehow. And I'm listening, and he says, "The Lord is exhausted." And I said, "What the hell?" And it said, "The Lord is exalted." And I remember thinking at the time, wow, that's way better. Because the exalted God, if truth be told, is kind of our own human creation, I think. Because everybody here in this beautiful theater, if you were God, let's admit it, we would want to be exalted. But the exhausted God you can connect to. I've even witnessed it here in the brief time I've been here. People who are so generous that they're actually the generosity of God. Extensive, caring, focused on you. That's the God we have. The God who is exhausted, just expending love and tenderness in your general direction. You can connect to that, like older folks will say, how was your weekend? Oh, I'm pooped, I'm exhausted, I had the grandkids for the weekend, but it's a good tired. I just loved having them here. You can connect to what that is, and it's an important kind of correction on a puny God we've settled for. That is the God who's always greater in love and in tenderness. I had a Jesuit friend named Bill Kane who was a writer. He lived in my community, but when his father was dying, he went home to New York, and he took care of him, and he would bathe him, and he would feed him, and he'd have to carry him to bed, and the father was quite old and dying of cancer, and he was exhausted taking care of his father. And he would put him to bed at night, and that role reversal that happens sometimes with our parents, he sat by his father's bedside, and he would read some book, like a Russian novel or something, and just like his father used to read to him when he was a kid. And he would be reading, and he'd be so tired after the day of taking care of his father. But his father would just be staring at his kid as Bill was reading. And Bill would catch him just staring at him. And he'd go, oh, no, fall asleep. Here's the point. I read, you fall asleep. Hello, we got this. And oh, yes, I'm sorry. And he would close his eyes, but then he couldn't keep himself. And he would pop one eye open, and staring at his kid. And they went back and forth, and Bill was pleading with him, please, I want to go to sleep. And after he died, he was reflecting back on this, and it was his father unable to take his eyes off his son. And that's the kind of God we have. Behold the one beholding you and smiling. If that's the God we have, and we know we have that God, then it moves us to stand at the margins and to be in the world who God is. Compassion, loving, kindness. I have 5 sisters and 2 brothers, and we all grew up in Los Angeles. And ever since the pandemic, we're once a month we get on a Zoom. We had never done that before, so they're all over the country. And so it was my mom's anniversary. She had died, somewhere at the end of the first year of the Donald Trump his first year as president. So she was quite vocal about that, but we were remembering her. And my mother was 92 years old when she died. My father had died when he was 70, which is my age at the moment, and that was some years ago. And she was smart and she was just a very all there mentally as she died in her own bed, in her own home, surrounded by her kids. And she wasn't a lick afraid of dying. She just was not afraid at all. In fact, a month before she died, she was just giddy. She was just so excited. She says, I've never done this before, and it was like something you might say just before skydiving, And in fact, the day before she died, I was sitting at the foot of her bed, and I was all alone, which never happened. People were always around, but I just happened to be there all alone. And she was asleep. And when she woke up, she saw me sitting at the foot of her bed, and she went, oh, for crying out loud, and she went back to sleep. Well, she was pissed that she wasn't dead, so sorry. And the very next day, same thing happened. I was there at exactly noon. I think some of my sisters went out to find lunch or something. And at exactly noon, she lifted her head from the bed, and she opened her eyes wide, and she let out this wondrous, glorious gasp. Skydiving. And she left us. And nobody in earshot of that sound could ever be afraid of death again. But in the last weeks of her life, she was in and out of consciousness, and so we'd be surrounding her, and there'd be 3 of us or all 8 of us, and she'd be in and out of consciousness, but then she'd wake up and she'd lock on to one of us, just one of us. And she would have this laser beam focus, and she'd say, with breathless delight, "You're here. You're here." And I remembered that when I buried her, that may well be the singular agenda item of our exhausted God, is to look at you straight in the eyes and say, "You're here. You're here." In fact, we always think about Jesus, the 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, which was, the precursor to our Lent. And I can never say the word Lent without mentioning Michelle Nunez, who was a homegirl gang member from the projects who worked at Homeboy. And she came into my office one day and she said, "It's official. I just found out my man's been cheating on me." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry." "I don't sweat it. I just went to church, got me them ashes, gave his ass up for Lent." And it's like Pavlov's dog. If I say the word Lent, I have to mention Michelle Nunez. But, you look at Jesus in the desert, and we have this narrative, that Jesus is anxious, and it's growling stomach, and it's dark night of the soul, and it's agony. Where I suspect what it mainly was 40 days and 40 nights of God saying to Jesus, "You're here." And Jesus not knowing fully what to say back except, "You're here." And I think that's the whole thing. You receive the tenderness of God, and then you choose to be that tenderness in the world, because that's where the joy is. Or as Jesus puts it, "My joy yours, your joy complete." And then we can go to the margins like Jesus, and we can take seriously what Jesus took seriously, which fortunately for us are only 4 things: inclusion, nonviolence, unconditional loving kindness, and compassionate acceptance. And that's how we go to the margins, so that we can look people in the eye and say, "You're here. Behold the one beholding you and smiling." So, as was mentioned in the kind introduction, Homeboy was started when I was pastor of the poorest parish in the city, Dolores Mission Church. It was nestled in the middle of 2 public housing projects, largest grouping of public housing west of the Mississippi. We had 8 gangs at war with each other, which is not typical of public housing in the United States. The Los Angeles Police Department called my parish the place of the highest concentration of gang activity in the whole city. So if Los Angeles was the gang capital of the world, my parish was the gang capital of Los Angeles. I buried my first young person killed because of this sadness in 1988, and 3 months ago I buried my 261st. not all from that parish, of course. But I run a large gang intervention program. I know a lot of gang members. I get asked to do this. First thing we did was we started a school because there were so many junior high, middle school age gang members who had been kicked out of their home school and nobody wanted them. So they were wreaking havoc in the middle of the day. They were selling drugs, they were writing on walls, they were violent. So I walked out to them in this particular place where they would hang out, and I would isolate them one at a time, and I'd say, if I found a school that would take you, would you go? And to my surprise, every single one said, yeah, I would. And then I couldn't find a school that would take them, so that kind of forced my hand. So right across the street from the church is our elementary school, our parochial school, grades K to 8, that occupied the first 2 floors. And the entire 3rd floor was the convent. And so one evening, there were about 8 Belgian nuns who worked there. I gathered all the nuns in the living room. And I said, hey, would you guys mind, moving out? And we could turn the convent into a school for gang members. And they looked at each other and they said, sure. And that was the extent, that was the entirety of their discernment process. And so we were off and running. We had gang members in large numbers from all of the 8 gangs came to our school. They had to walk up the stairs through our elementary school to get to the 3rd floor. And it was a tough place. We had like 3 major brawls a day, fights we always had to break up, teachers who wouldn't last. I had a principal who lasted exactly 1 day. The next day I called him, to find out where he is. He had changed his number and had apparently checked into a witness protection program. And so, but the thing is, they came because they were welcomed. And this created something of a disconnect in the parish. People would kind of sidle up to me, parishioners, and say, hey, aren't churches supposed to be hermetically sealed? Good people in and bad people out, which was a good gospel challenge. And then the gang members started to say, if only we had jobs. So myself and the women in the parish were mainly just women with children who lived in the projects. There weren't a lot of men. So myself and the women, we marched around the factories that surrounded the housing projects, trying to find felony-friendly employers, and that wasn't so forthcoming. So we just had to create things, like a maintenance crew, a landscaping crew, a crew to build our child care center, all made up of members of the rival 8 gangs in the parish. Then in 1992, after the acquittal of the 4 police officers who beat down Rodney King, the whole city exploded. Every pocket of poverty ignited, except the poorest pocket, which was my parish. So that led the LA Times to be curious about that fact, and so they came and asked me, why did things not ignite here? And I said, well, I'm not sure exactly, but we do have 60 strategically hired gang members who have a reason to get up in the morning and a reason not to gangbang the night before, or more to the point of your question, a reason not to torch their own community. So the article appeared the following day. Well, the following day after that, I get summoned to the Beverly Hills office of a movie producer named Ray Stark, who happened to have $500 million. And he sat me down. He said, how should I spend my money? As I look back on it, I can see that I woefully undershot my request, but I was young, I had hair. So I said, well, there's an abandoned bakery across the street from our elementary school. You could buy it. It has ovens. They don't work, but you could fix them. We could put hairnets on gang members, and rivals, enemies, could make croissants together. And I don't know, we could call it Homeboy Bakery. And he said, sure. And that, of course, was the extent of my business plan. And we're off and running. A month later, we started Homeboy Tortillas in the Grand Central Market in downtown Los Angeles. And once we had plural, we changed our name. We had called ourselves previously Jobs for a Future. And then we changed it to Homeboy Industries, as if there was any industry involved in this. And not everything worked. I'll be the first to admit it. Homeboy Plumbing really was not hugely successful. Who knew? People didn't want gang members in their homes. I mean, I did not see that coming. But now, nobody ever intends to do something like this, but we backed our way. We've evolved our way into now becoming the largest gang intervention rehab reentry program on our planet. 10,000 folks a year walk through our doors. There are 120,000 gang members in LA County, 1,100 gangs. I suspect there isn't a single gang member in the county who doesn't know where we are and what we do. And so they come, and we call them trainees, but it's really about healing. I suppose we were job-centric at the beginning. Our motto was, nothing stops a bullet like a job. And now we've become more healing-centered. We came to the realization that an employed gang member may or may not go back to prison, or an educated one may or may not. But then we discovered the truth, I think, which is a healed gang member will not reoffend, period. And so far that's been true, probably in the last 15 years of our 36-year history. So every gang member who walks through our doors comes barricaded behind a wall of shame and disgrace, and the only thing that can scale that wall is tenderness. Every single one comes with what psychologists would call a disorganized attachment. Mom was either frightened or frightening. And you can't calm yourself down if you've never been soothed. The Buddhists say, "O nobly born, remember who you really are." I think that's kind of our intentionality at Homeboy. A gang member, man or woman, will walk through our doors, and people see them. And they look them in the eye, and they say, "You're here. You're here." And so every gang member hopes to find at our place, I think, a safe place so that they can be seen and then they can be cherished. A gang member, especially, who've been in prison for a long time, will come in and say, we're used to being watched, but we're not used to being seen. And that's a good difference, I think. And so we want to look at them and say, "Oh, nobly born, remember who you really are." If it's true that a traumatized person is likely to cause trauma, then it has to be equally true that a cherished person will be able to find their way to the joy there is in cherishing themselves and others. So we have 13 social enterprises, bakeries, restaurants, dog grooming, electronic recycling. We do a thing called Threads, Homeboy Threads, where we repurpose discarded fabric so it just doesn't sit in a landfill somewhere. And so we put people to work, and enemies work side by side. We have free tattoo removal. No place on the planet removes more tattoos than we do, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. If any of you are starting to regret that Ateneo tattoo you have, Bobby, see me afterwards. And so in tattoos that was born of listening to people, I suppose. And we were always just kind of responding. And a guy named Frank came into my office, and he was 2 days out of Corcoran State Prison, and a gang member covered in tattoos, and I had never met him before. And he was sitting in front of my desk, and tattooed across his forehead, Old English lettering filled the entire expanse of his forehead, and pardon my French, but it said, "Fuck the world." And he said, "You know, I'm having a hard time finding a job." And I said, "Well, Frank, maybe we could put our heads together on this one, you know." And I do, you know, well, where do I send him, you know, to McDonald's? Do you want fries with that, you know? So naturally, I hired him, and he worked in our bakery. He bagged bread. And I went to White Memorial Hospital, where you were born, which I just found out today. And I found a doctor who had a laser machine, and so he agreed to give me 1 hour a month free tattoo removal to chip away on Frank's forehead and 5 others that I had met with alarming tattoos. And then in no time at all, I had a waiting list of 3,000 gang members who wanted the same service. So I couldn't stay with that arrangement. Parentheses, Frank is currently a security guard at a movie studio in Hollywood. And there is no trace left of the angriest, dumbest thing he had ever done. Proving once and for all, I hope, that all of us are a whole lot more than the worst thing we've ever done. And so part of our task at Homeboy is to encounter folks who are barricaded behind a wall of shame and disgrace. And how do we reach in and dismantle those messages and replace them with the truth? So, you know, I should say, parenthetically, you know, that I'm a Jesuit, you know, like the Pope. I'm just saying, but the homies don't really know what a Jesuit is, truth be told. So there are like 3 of us there, you know, myself and there are 2 therapists, Frank and Mark, and I'm happy to have Jesuit, you know, companions working there over these many years. But Homeboy is a huge headquarters, and my office is right in the middle. I can look out into the whole expanse of the reception area, and I'm glass enclosed. And we have about 8 tour groups a day from all over the world. People come in to go into the bakery, they put on goggles, and they watch tattoos being removed. So it's quite a good tour, actually. And the homies give the tours. And so I was sitting behind my desk, and there were 2 homies sitting in front of my desk. And a tour group just comes and plants itself right in the, you know, in front of my office. And I kind of wave faintly, you know, and it's one of those observe our founder in his natural habitat, you know. And so I'm sitting there trying to hold this conversation, and the tour guide is Osvaldo, who, as the homies would say, has a loud-ass voice. And so he's saying, "This is Fr Greg Boyle. He is the founder of Homeboy Industries. He is a jiu-jitsu priest." So from my desk, I'm kind of doing some of my most impressive moves. So anyway, I told you that to tell you this. On February 27th, 1540, St. Ignatius of Loyola enters for the first time a word in his journal or spiritual diary. And he proceeds to use the word a lot for the 12 years remaining of his life. And he goes back and he underlines or circles the word for all the times he used it. And I speak Spanish, but I had never heard this word before. And the word is acatamiento. Acatamiento. And it comes from an archaic word, acatar, which means to look at something with attention. Acatamiento. And it gets translated as affectionate awe. And I suspect Ignatius experienced it, of course, as some singular mystical moment. And actually, it was born of a reflection on the Trinity. But it's as if Ignatius didn't want it to rest there or remain there. And in fact, suggesting that it's our stance at the margins, acatamiento, to look with attention, affectionate awe, which reminds me of the Acts of the Apostles when it has that one odd line and it says, and awe came upon everyone, which seemed to suggest that the measure of health in any community at all, including this one, may well reside in our ability to stand in awe at what the poor have to carry, rather than stand in judgment at how they carry it. Acatamiento. It's our disposition at the margins. We don't go to the margins to make a difference, because then it's about me. We go to the margins so that the folks there make me different. Then it's about us. You don't go to the margins to rescue or save or fix. You go to the margins to enter into this affectionate awe, which issues in an exquisite mutuality where there is no us and them, there's just us. God's dream come true. So many years ago, I was invited to Richmond, Virginia, to give a talk to 600 social workers. It's what we used to call back in those days a gang in-service. So social workers would gather, teachers would gather, and have a gang in-service because it was so pervasive in the United States during that period of the late 80s and what I call the decade of death, 88 to 98. I'd been to a lot of these, where you have keynotes and breakout sessions and workshops, and social workers would learn that, no hopeful kid has ever joined a gang in the history of the world. That gangs aren't the places kids go when they've been, they are the places they go when they've encountered their lives as a misery. And who doesn't know that misery loves company? And no kid is seeking anything when he joins a gang, always fleeing something. No exceptions. So I would go to these things often enough. So I said yes, and figuring I'd do a keynote or something. And so I bought my plane ticket. Well, a week before I was to fly, I pull out the letter inviting me, and to my horror, I discover that I am to be the only speaker from 9 to 5 all damn day. And I said what the homies often say, oh, hell no, I'm not going to be the only speaker. So I've called in quickly 2 homies, trainees, Andre, African-American gang member, and his worst enemy, Jose. And I sit them down, and they're like in their 9th month in their 18-month program with us. And I said, look, at the end of the week, you're flying with me to Richmond, Virginia. I'd like you to get up in front of 600 social workers and tell your stories. Take your time, because we got a long-ass day to fill. Well, I had never heard their stories before, and Jose gets up first. I suppose he was like 25 years old at the time. Gang member, shot caller, tattoos, been to prison. At that juncture, they have phases, the homies, where they work at different phases during their 18 months with us. And he had become a very valued member of our substance abuse team, and a man solid in his own recovery now. And now he was giving, advice to younger homies and homegirls who had addiction issues. So not only was he a gang member and been to prison and a shot caller, he also had a long stretch as a homeless man, even longer stretch as a heroin addict. And so he gets up in front of 600 social workers, and he says, I guess you could say my mom and me, we didn't get along so good. I think I was 6 when my mom looked at me and she said, why don't you just kill yourself? You're such a burden to me. Well, 600 social workers audibly gasp. And he says, it sounds way worser in Spanish. He said, and then we got whiplash going from gasp to laugh. And then he continued, I think I was 9 when my mom drove me down to the deepest part of Baja California, and she walks me up to an orphanage, and she knocks on the door, and the guy comes to the door, and she says, I found this kid. And she left me there for 90 days until my grandmother could get out of her where she had dumped me, and my grandmother rescued me. My mom beat me every single day of my elementary school years with things you could imagine and a lot of things you couldn't. Every day, my back was bloodied and scarred. In fact, I had to wear 3 t-shirts to school each day. First t-shirt because the blood would seep through, and second t-shirt, you could still see it. Finally, the third t-shirt, you couldn't see any blood. Kids at school, they'd make fun of me. Hey, fool, it's 100 degrees. Why are you wearing 3 t-shirts? And then he stopped speaking, so overwhelmed with emotion. And he seemed to be staring at a piece of his story that only he could see. And when he could regain his speech, he said through his tears, I wore 3 t-shirts well into my adult years because I was ashamed of my wounds. I didn't want anybody to see them. But now I welcome my wounds. I run my fingers over my scars. My wounds are my friends. After all, how can I help heal the wounded if I don't welcome my own wounds? And awe came upon everyone. Acatamiento, affectionate awe. The measure of our compassion lies not in our service of those on the margins, but only in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. For the truth of the matter is this: if we don't welcome our own wounds, we may well be tempted to despise the wounded. Acatamiento, it's a stance, it's a disposition, standing at the margins. In the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, in the meditation on the 2 standards, Ignatius says simply, see Jesus standing in the lowly place. He's not standing outside the lowly place and pointing to the lowly place. See him standing there. And you want to stand with him, with acatamiento. One last story. We're going to take a break, and then I'm going to invite my compadres up here to field some questions. So it occurs sometimes in the United States anyway, at Jesuit universities, to force their students to read my books against their will, and I'm not complaining about that. But my alma mater, Gonzaga University in Spokane, had forced their incoming freshman class to read Tattoos on the Heart. So they said, could you come and speak to 1,000 people on a Tuesday night? And could you bring 2 homies with you? And so generally speaking, I pick homies in a particular way. I often will pick homies who are enemies, rivals, just to force them to share a hotel room, just to mess with them. And I always pick homies, generally speaking, who have never flown before, just for the thrill of watching gang members panicked in the sky. I was at LAX International Airport. I had 2 older homies, and one guy said to me, hey, are we flying Virgin Airlines because it's our first time? I said, yes, it's a requirement. We'll be coming home on American. So I invited 2 homies, Larry, African-American gang member, and Mario, also his enemy. And homies, recently I had lots of flights, Omaha, Nashville, Boston, first-time flyers, and they're panicky and anxious. But I've never had anybody like this guy, Mario. Mario was just so terrified of flying it. It was kind of freaking me out. In fact, I'd never seen hyperventilating before. He was, and we hadn't even boarded the plane yet, So in Los Angeles, there's LAX, but there's also Burbank, which is smallish, but Southwest Airlines, big planes. And you don't walk through that hermetically sealed chute to board the plane. You walk out onto the tarmac like you're the president, and you climb up those steps like the president. And so I'm sitting there with Mario, and Larry is off somewhere exploring Burbank Airport. And it's early morning, first flight of the day, and our flight crew arrives, and I can see that 2 female flight attendants both have very large cups of Starbucks coffee, and they're schlepping up the steps to board the plane. And Mario says, when are we going to board the plane? I said, well, as soon as they sober up the pilots. There they go now. Perhaps I should not have said that. I should tell you that in our 36-year history, and you guys will attest to this, Mario is the most tattooed individual who's ever worked there, which is really saying something. He's all sleeved out, tattoos to his fingertips, neck blackened with the name of his gang, head shaved, covered in tattoos, forehead, cheeks, chin, eyelids that say the end, so that apparently when he's lying in his coffin, there will be no doubt for anybody. And so I'm walking him through, and I'd never been in public with him, and people are like, oh my God, and mothers are clutching their kids more closely, and I go, God, isn't that interesting? Because if you were to go to Homeboy on a 14-hour flight to Los Angeles, say Monday, and walk up to anybody there and say, who's the kindest, most gentle soul who works here? They'll wait for one beat, and then they'll say, Mario. Yeah, Mario. Mario is proof that only the soul that ventilates the world with tenderness has any chance of changing the world. Mario is living proof, as George Kaufman writes, that the only non-delusional response to everything is kindness. So we get to the school Tuesday night, 1,000 people, but before the evening talk happens, they've invited us to speak at 92 different classes. And I go, oh, come on. Anyway, I told those guys, you go up there and talk. I'm going to sit in the back of the room. And so they did, and they did a good job. Mario was quite nervous. Stories of terror and torture and violence. And honest to God, if their stories had been flames, you'd have to keep your distance. Otherwise, you'd get scorched. I would not have survived a single day of either of their childhoods. So, just like here, the two of them got up and told their stories. I got up and did my thing. The difference now is we're going to have a break in a second, but right after, they came up and stood on either side of me at the podium and for question and answer. And I said, yes, ma'am. And a woman stands and she says, yeah, I got a question. It's for Mario. First question out the gate is for Mario. And Mario is this very tall, skinny drink of water, and he walks up to the microphone and he's just terrified. Yes? And she says, well, Mario, you say you're a father and you have two, a son and a daughter who are entering their teenage years. What wisdom do you impart to them? You know, what advice do you give them? Mario clutches the microphone and he closes his eyes and he's starting to tremble and he's getting a friggin' hernia trying to come up with whatever the hell he's going to say. And when suddenly he blurts out, as soon as he says those two words, he rushes back to his microphone, clutching closed-eyed refuge. And now he's really trembling. And now I know he's losing his battle with his tears. But he wants to get the whole sentence out. I just don't want my kids to turn out to be like me. And there's silence. Until the woman who asked the question stands, and now it's her turn to cry. Why wouldn't you want your kids to turn out to be like you? You are loving, you are kind, you are gentle, you are wise. I hope your kids turn out to be like you. And 1,000 total perfect strangers stand, and they will not stop clapping. And all Mario can do is hold his face in his hands, so overwhelmed that this room full of strangers had returned him to himself. And he had returned them to themselves. And I think that's the only praise our exhausted God has any interest in. No us and them, just us. Taking seriously what Jesus took seriously: inclusion, nonviolence, unconditional loving kindness, compassionate acceptance. Wanting to stand at the margins because that's the only way they'll ever get erased, and choosing to be in the world who God is: compassion, love, and kindness. Believing that the highest form of spiritual maturity is our own tenderness. Believing that systems change when people change, and people change when they are cherished. Acatamiento. It's how we stand at the margins. And our gathering, though it will continue after the break, this is not the place you've come to. It was always going to be the place you go from. To imagine a circle of compassion and then imagine nobody standing outside that circle. And so my sense of you already, and frankly, my sense of the people in this country who so believe in kinship, is that you've all ceased to care if anybody accuses you of wasting your time at the margins. For in this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing. Thank you very much. See you in 15 minutes.
See you back in 15 minutes. It's just a break so you can grab a drink, go to the bathroom. For those who had pre-ordered some of Father Greg's books, they're apparently at the counter outside.
There will be a 15-minute intermission. There will be a 15-minute intermission. Thank you.
This place stands for a high degree of reverence for how complex human beings are. That indeed everybody is a whole lot more than the worst things they've ever done. And so we want to see people as God does, with the highest, deepest reverence for that complexity. To see each other today and always for the truth of who we are. That we're God's delight, and there's nothing you can do to alter that. That's just who you are.
People drive by all the time and they see Homeboy Industries, well, I see living water. If you're thirsty, you'll drink it. And it's not if you need it, it's if you want it. If you want this place, it'll work for you.
You know, I didn't believe before that I can do a drug-free life and, you know, do recovery and be a better mother and a sister and friend. But today I stand here on my 2 feet and I'm a strong woman.
Because our motto here is family. Our motto here is kinship.
Before it was just, you know, all about me. It's not about me anymore. It's about my family, my friends, my loved ones, and the community right here at Homeboys.
I know everybody in here has gone through something, but it's the strength inside of us that we have and the support around us.
You guys make the decision to walk through the doors. It's the most courageous decision that I ever made. I'm proud of that.
For you to come here, you're a light in your neighborhood. You're a light in your barrio because you chose to come here. Like every day we make a choice to turn our light on. And I thank you guys for giving me the courage to keep my light on.
Life is not scripted. Drugs, gangs, prison, death, that's not gonna define me.
I know this ain't my master's degree from Harvard or nothing, but it feels like it.
Remember when we were on the prison beds and we were behind walls or behind those bars? Some of us didn't stop dreaming. We dreamed of a life that we wanted when we got out. And we made all these promises to ourselves, and now it's time for us to keep those promises.
You chose to believe that it can be different. You chose to believe that you can change your life.
You're home, dog, and this is it.
It don't matter what color we are, or what size, or what background, we all share the same pain.
There's an idea that's taken root in the world that there just might be lives out there that matter less than other lives. And Homeboy Industries stands against that idea. Everybody's equal, everybody matters, everybody counts.
We are more than gangsters, we are more than drug addicts, we are more than what the poor barrios and the ghettos told us we are.
You're serving the world with your work.
with your effort.
Remind yourself of what it is you're doing, because you just don't know who's watching, and the words you might say to someone would allow them to turn back the hands of time.
I love this place. I love that what it did to my life, and some of the people that I've known from back in the days, and how it restored our lives and got us back to love.
Today I learned how to read. Today I'm in my kids' life.
Today I'm a father to my kids. They call me Dad.
Beyond the sky is the limit, and I'm gonna keep going. I might not ever touch the star, but I'm gonna keep going until I feel that I touched that star.
Today I know who I am, and I know what I stand for, and I know what I believe in. Each and every single one of you guys is a treasure, is a gem, is a diamond. And your guys' gifts like shine here in this place. This building would just be a building if it wasn't for each and every single one of you guys.
What am I? Who am I? I'm a homeboy. I'm victory. You're amazing. You're champions.
We all want to be invited to the place of inclusion and acceptance, of healing and forgiveness, a place of refuge and kinship. Invite people to that place today.
Hello, my name is Anthony Mondragon, and I just got back from studying abroad in Florence, Italy, something I never thought I would accomplish. I was incarcerated since 15, a juvenile. I was feeling alone in the world. I had no one. That's how I was feeling growing up. I came to Homeboys, I believe, when I was 16 or 17. Traveling has always been my dream, honestly, traveling. The first time I traveled somewhere was with Fr Greg. That honestly helped me open up my eyes, saying that I could travel wherever I want. Well, I took a semester in college. Took my first year Italian. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the culture, and I seen where you can do a study abroad in Italy. I got a strike. I'm on probation. I didn't honestly think that I would be able to go to Italy. We went to court, and I told the judge, like, pursuing a higher education, it does reduce the level of mass incarceration, and he approved me to go to Italy. A light switch moment for me was when I landed in Florence airport, knowing that I could do it, and I did do it, and I could accomplish everything that I want to do in my life. I'm gonna continue pursuing my education. I'm gonna get my degree in mechanic engineering. The only family that I can honestly say that I have is Homeboy Industries, because once I came back from Italy, it was like, they were proud of me. And just knowing that I'm not alone anymore, it's the best feeling ever. Your donations are what makes it possible for us to open up our minds and accomplish our dreams and goals. Thank you for shining your light and supporting Homeboy Industries. ¿Cómo stai? Mi chiamo Antonio, io sono da Los Angeles. L'Italia è una città muy bella, mi ha cambiato la vida.
I love it. My name is Brandon Beverly. I've been at Homeboys for about 6 going on 7 months. I got locked up in 2012, and then from then on, and kept getting locked up. Got my son taken away. Lost a lot of people in my life, and this last court date I had, it was like my last chance, so I kind of just ran out of options. This is my son Zayden, and he's 2 years old. My dreams for him is make sure he grows up with like the things I didn't have. Not to sound cliche, but just to make sure that he knows he's loved and that I supported everything that he does. So those are kind of like what I have in mind for him. Homeboys is helping me understand the things I went through with my dad and what I don't want to go through with him. It's helping me be more aware, more considerate to what he's going through or whatever he's feeling. It's helping me be more patient, for sure, that's for sure. And it's helping me be able to love myself, because if I can't love myself, I can't say that I love my son.
Hey.
I love you.
Dad.
Your donation to Homeboys is impacting my son and myself, so thank you. Blow a kiss.
Today means everything to me. I've waited so long to get my high school diploma. I just want to be able to move on to college now and just show my girls that they can be something.
We have folks who have courageously and bravely tackled their own education, and that you can't judge a book by its cover, but you also can't judge it by its first chapter. And so we celebrate the second chapter for folks.
I'm incredibly proud to congratulate them today, to welcome their families. Thank you so much for coming. All of your families are here. It's a wonderful time to celebrate. Your kids are here. So thank you and congratulations, class of 2019. We are so excited to celebrate you.
I just want to thank Fr Greg and all of our donors, supporters for making this place possible. I thank my brother for coming, my dad and my mom for supporting me, and I got full custody of my son.
Special thanks to my son, because he's the one that motivated me to finish my high school diploma.
I didn't do it just for myself, I did it for my kids and the things that I have that's going on in the future.
Special shout out to my wife and my son. I was at work in school, so thank you for pushing me and understanding me with my difficulties.
Since coming here, I've got my GED, I got my kids back, my case closed, my housing, a job that I've been consistent at for like a year, so.
The 8 people who are graduating today have worked tirelessly to get this accomplishment done. As they reach this day, it is truly a celebration of resilience, of passion, of their intelligence. But I would say even more outstanding is their desire to encourage the individual next to them, which is really a testimony to kinship and our mission that we have here.
It's a beautiful day, and I love today, and I'm glad that I graduated today.
Hi, I'm Jermaine Smith. I'm a navigator here at Homeboy Industries.
My name is Edwin Ramos, and I work for Homeboy Industries, and I'm a trainee.
We used to be worse enemies on the streets, and now?
Now we family at Homeboys.
I can remember even in the interview, them asking, would I be prepared to work side by side with, someone who I might have been shooting at on the streets or was shooting at me like with rivals. We ended up in a truck together. Nobody's like kind of formally introduced us, but we knew. We ended up like laughing the whole trip. We ended up doing like 3-4 trips that day and kicked it off from there.
Homeboys did open minds and we realized a lot of stuff, so I guess I'm here working with one of mine.
The people who you were taught are supposed to be the ones who you have to watch your back from. They end up being some of the most loving people that you come across. This is a belief system that's been put in us. We've been taught to believe this. Every day we challenge that belief system by being here. I think what helped me turn on my light switch was coming through the doors here at Homeboys and seeing rivals working together, rivals holding each other's kids, taking Christmas pictures, hanging out at the same table with each other's families at Thanksgiving, and you just start noticing that the whole building is like that.
When you come to Homeboys, it's like you can change your whole life. I want to leave here with my GED, my driver license, a high school diploma, learn how to read and write.
Only through donations from people like you are we able to keep the light on for other homeboys and homegirls to see.
Thank you for supporting us at Homeboy Industries.
What happens if we actually believe in people? What happens if we see them not for their deficits, but for their strengths? There's no other place in the country that serves more gang members than Homeboy Industries. We're the largest gang reintegration program in the country. We open the doors for those that we would say have no chance of being served anywhere else.
I'm thankful for Homeboy for helping me open up my eyes and realizing that my life is worth a lot.
I almost just lost hope, and when I came to Homeboys, it was just open arms. Everybody is like a family here. We all love each other, and this is my new support system.
On those dark days, that's the only thing that made me feel like I had hope, is remembering what I had here at Homeboys, remembering the feeling.
All the services that we offer at Homeboy include everything that you imagine: case management, mental health, peer navigators, tattoo removal, a whole education department, including a partner high school to ensure people have a pathway to a high school diploma, and workforce development, which helps with career pathways and the last stages of our program. We're an employment first model, and so we want to plug in with a way to make a living and a life that provides sort of the relief that folks need. This idea of work on self and work, actually job training skills, come together in this beautiful way that creates identity. So we have Homegirl Cafe, Homeboy Bakery, Homeboy Silk Screen, Homeboy Farmers Markets, our newest venture, which is Homeboy Recycling. And in that, we create this community in which we all walk with each other to make each other better and to announce to the world that change is possible.
I'm thankful for Homeboys because it gives me a sense of compassion, a new way to live, a new way of thinking.
I was given the opportunity to have space to value myself so that in turn I can value others.
It's a place where it has brought me back to myself.
Well, I'm thankful for Homeboys because they helped me get over a hurdle that I was struggling with to go back to school.
Homeboy Industries taught me how to be a father.
The walking with each other that happens at Homeboy, that's the magic. It's about us sharing our humanity.
Homeboy is family.
Homeboy is opportunity.
A place where you could come and be yourself.
Home.
Togetherness.
Homeboys is redemption.
Homeboys is extraordinary.
The family that I didn't have in my past.
Homeboys is paying it forward.
Homeboy is the way out.
Homeboys is a safe haven for me.
Homeboy Industries is holy.
Likod lang siya. Okay lang.
Okay na ba? Para lang alam mo na may
May nagtatanong.
Or out, i-zoom out na lang. Pag may nagtatanong. Baka mahirapan ka balik-balik eh.
Okay na. Okay. Saka dirty.
Hindi kasi siya...
Hi everyone, welcome back. My only job here is to field your questions in case you don't want to go to the microphones yourselves. I've been told that you can either go to the mic or if that is an issue, the mic can be brought to you. So don't hesitate if you have a question to ask. Before we start, I've been asked to just announce to people that there is a slight problem with a bunch of books, tattoos that were ordered, but got stuck in customs because of the typhoons. They were supposed to come out earlier this week, but they could not come out because of all of the rain and all of the flood. So the books are there. We'll find a way to get them to you. Don't worry too much about it, but if you go to the table outside, they won't be there yet. Just so you know. Okay, so welcome everybody again. Thank you for coming all this way. You can ask the questions direct. Don't worry about me being the one to ask the questions, or if you want, just raise your hand. And it can be about anything and everything. Okay. I was listening to your stories earlier, and the first question that kind of popped into my head multiple times was really, if you looked at your journey with Homeboy Industries, how transformational was that for you? Is there something in particular that sticks with you as kind of the weight of this experience? Is there a particular character? Is there a particular feeling? Something that you carry with you every day?
So something that I carry every day is that they don't judge you. They don't judge you at all. Like he talked about Mario with all them tattoos. Everywhere else, they're going to judge him. But at Homeboy Industries, no one judges him. And us, like me, have tattoos, he has tattoos, and we could just do our job there without getting judged.
For me, I think it has a lot to do with having a second chance of coming home again. You know, then going there, like you said, like, you know, I had a place where I felt comfortable. I could talk to people that could relate to me and I could share with. And it's not an easy thing for me to share all the time, you know. So being able to talk to somebody that's been there and be able to walk on my steps, it helps. You know, Father Greg talked about healing. You know, talking to the youth, being able to do something with them to help them stir a different path, to asking them to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to them. Be able to help change people's lives in a way that I wish I had when I was that age, you know. At that time, I didn't want that change. But like I said, looking at them was like looking in a mirror and giving them the chance to give them the information they need to know, what to expect in life, the sacrifices that they are going to make if they choose to walk that life. See, a lot of times when we grow up in the gang, all we hear is like the glory stories, and they glorify it. They talk about like, you want to be the top dog, you want to be the guy that everybody opens a beer to when you walk into a party where all the girls want to know your name. You know, and that's short-lived. It lasts like 2 years, 3 years, compared to spending the rest of your life in prison. Nah, there's more to it than that. I tell everybody, like, you don't know what you're going to really give up. You know, you're going to lose everything. And all that thing, that fame and glory you thought you were going to earn, by the time you come home, like myself, everyone's going to be gone. When you come home, you'll just be a stranger and no one's going to know you. All that you did for that, it's over. It's gone. There's no one left. So, you know, it's a motivation of helping others and at the same time healing myself at the same time. Yes, please.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank Father and the two homies for your uplifting talk and sharing. Thank you. Thank you so much. My question is addressed to Father Boyle. Father, I'd like to know, we've talked about an exhausted God and an affectionate God with awe. And I'd like to know what happens to you during your moments, low moments, burnout moments, moments that, make you feel frustrated if there are those moments. And what is it that lifts you up again? Makes you look at what is it again, Father? The word? Atatamiento. What brings you back there? Thank you, Father.
Sure, thank you. You know, so I've been working with gang members for 40 years. Probably in year 10 was when I had this experience, and I put it in one of my books, but it changed my life completely. You know, I think I would ride my bike in the middle of the night in the housing projects and put that Uzi down. Are you sure you want to shoot that guy? And I wouldn't even sleep. It was crazy making. And like folks at Homeboy who, senior staff who will say, oh, I guess I'm just too compassionate. I need to take 3 months off. And I say, with all due respect and love, you've allowed this to become about you. That's why you're burning out. And Mother Teresa tells us we're not called to be successful, we're called to be faithful. So if the thing that moves your engine and drives you is success, evidence-based outcomes, then you're going to burn out, I think. And somebody has to worry about that, I suppose, in our organization, but it's not going to be me, because I know it, doing the next loving thing is what keeps you from burning out. Delighting in the person who's right in front of you. And so I gave a talk once in Houston where a young guy who was covered in tattoos was a hardcore gang intervention worker. He came to me after the talk, pleading with me. He says, how do you reach them? Meaning gang members. And I said, for starters, Stop trying to reach them. Can you be reached by them? Can you allow your heart to be altered? Can you receive who they are? And for me, that makes all the difference. Then suddenly you're freed. So for me, I don't really care about outcomes or success, only because I want my intentionality to be focused entirely on loving the person standing right in front of me. So gang members aren't problems to be solved, they're human beings to be loved. But sometimes we fall into that trap, to fix, rescue, and save. And so that changed. There's a kind of long story about it, but it's in one of my books. But it was, and once I had that moment, I said, oh, I've been doing this incorrectly. And then I changed how I've done it. And I think I can honestly say I've been exhausted, but I've never been close to burnout since that day. And so.
Sorry, I forgot to ask you earlier to please state your name and then ask your question.
Dali del Rosario. I'm Dr. Ruben Encarnacion, clinical psychologist. Thank you so much for that inspiring and uplifting talk from the three of you. Father Greg Boyle, having reached his 70s, begs the question of succession planning. So I was asking Enrique, is that your name? I was asking Enrique, what were the stages in the gang intervention recovery phase, no? And I was comforted to know that there's 18 months and so on and so forth. A rough parallel that I would draw to the Philippine setting is the substance abuse recovery and rehabilitation, where you undergo like 12 months. The model before, in the 90s and the early 2000s, was that the best counselors, facilitators for drug abuse patients would be former drug addicts themselves, no? But when that was going on, I saw much power tripping. I saw facilitators hurting, beating up their young colleagues, until the mid-2000s, when the mode of rehabilitation for substance abuse became community-based, no? So my question is there a parallel between gang intervention and substance abuse, the way it has gone in the Philippines? Thank you.
That's an excellent question. You know, there are two things on that. One is like succession plan. You know, I don't run Homeboy, you know, at the moment. The homies have kind of come from below, who came through the program, and they run the program. And so that's as it should be. So, you know, probably, you know, 20 years ago, the question most on everybody's mind, donors, funders, my board, was succession plan. And those are two words we haven't heard in 20 years, probably. Because everybody kind of gets it, oh, I get it. It's kind of organically, you know, people become navigators, people become case managers like these two men. And then they become directors, you know, and they have business cards and they run the place. So that's kind of what happens. My fear sometimes is, you know, what is the main quality that you would need to be a beneficial presence to a drug addict or a gang member? If you're the proud owner of a Pulse, you can do that. Yes, it's true, you know, that most rehabs are people who are in recovery, and that's good. But my fear always is in society is we disqualify ourselves. we say, oh gosh, you know. Now, you know, I couldn't be a beneficial presence to a gang member because I've never been a gang member. But the difference is, I remember in the early days, you know, I'd be around a table with all gang members from the whole city, and they're working in the streets, and they're hardcore gang intervention workers, and they had respect for me because they knew I was in the streets as well. But I was the only non-gang member. And every once in a while they'd say, you know, Padre, con todo mi respeto, you know, we think gang members are going to listen to us more than they're going to listen to you. And I said, you're absolutely right, if the task is yakking at gang members. But since the task is to receive them, to listen to them, to let your heart be altered by them, everybody can do that. And that's the difference, because Homeboy isn't about advice. It's about creating a culture where people feel seen, safe, and cherished. And cherishing is kind of the thing that cuts across everybody. Everybody can cherish. And cherishing isn't hard. Remembering to cherish is a challenge. That's difficult. So you're trying to not create any kind of division at all. You want there to be no daylight that's separating us. And that's kind of the character of the kinship of God. There is no us and them, there's just us. So I don't think I've answered your question, but there you have it. Help me.
I wanted to kind of follow up on a point you mentioned there with a request for some advice. You talk about extravagant tenderness. In your story is very clear this is something that you all share at Homeboy. What would you advise somebody like myself and people like me who are uncomfortable with expressing extravagant tenderness? How do we move beyond kind of this fear of being out there to actually become available? Is there any trick to it, or you just jump in? How does it play out at Homeboy when people first experience it?
There's a young lady named Taylor that works with us. She has no gang association, nothing, right? And a lot of them come nervous. They're not really sure how they'll be accepted, you know? And she came all the way from the East Coast. We're on the West Coast. But she came with a sincere heart, you know what I mean? And it don't matter whether you're a gang member. Father Greg just said it right now. You know, when you come with a good heart, and at first people might be skeptical of you at first and a little hesitant, you know? But when they see that you're throwing your whole heart into it, and you're going that extra mile, and it never varies. You never think where you like, oh, it's fake. They're always steady. They're always steadfast. It shows. Your true character, your heart, is always in a show. That's why, one thing we always tell ourselves, always be yourself, because the real person is always going to shine. You know what I mean? Whether it's bad or good. So never alter from who you are. And the people that come to Homeboys that with a serious heart, that are not gang members, and they show us that we could trust them, that they are legit, that they're there with, to help us and to grow themselves. They're always going to be welcome. So the best thing to do is, I would say, just like get in there and let them know that you care. Associate, get to know the people, and you can see that in every one of us we have something good inside us that's worth learning about.
I believe respect. I believe respect runs a long way at Homeboy Industries due to the fact that we got rival gang members there, people that fought in street wars, and they're both there. Respect. You going there, you're going to get that respect because everybody's there is trying to change their lives. And if you're there to help, you're gonna get respect. You know, because I mean, we're all there for the same purpose, and we're not, and those doors are always open. So that's just what I believe in. It all has to do with respect, and we're all in maturity, because we all matured and we all went there for help.
There's a poet, Mary Oliver, in the United States, who died not that long ago at like 83. And before she died, she said, I've learned 3 things in my 83 years of living. 1, pay attention. 2, be astonished. 3, share your astonishment. So it's all about stance. It's never about message. I never think about what's the message we need to communicate. No, it's really about loving. So Elaine and I, we were talking about this earlier about, there's a Tibetan saying that says, wherever you have received the most love, that's your home. And I remember I heard that and I went, yeah, not so fast, because when you're not home and you're somewhere else, you're homesick. So the trick is to know that loving is your home. And so no matter where you are, in Manila or Los Angeles, you're never homesick. And so then that becomes the focus rather than message. What's my message to these young people? What advice can I give that guy? No, it's never about that stuff. It's about paying attention, listening, be astonished at what folks have had to carry in their lives. And then share the astonishment, which is also about holding the mirror up. At Homeboy, we're allergic to the idea of holding the bar up and asking homies to measure up. Mainly because our exhausted God doesn't do that with us. Instead, you hold the mirror up and you share your astonishment. Look who you are. Look what you've achieved. Look what you recognize in yourself now that you didn't see before. So it's less about words, it's less about message, it's not about advice most times, because people know what to do, they just need to know who they are. Your hope is that they don't stay strangers to themselves. And that the point of the healing is that people become sturdy and resilient. And after 18 months, our folks leave Homeboy, and the world's going to throw at them what it will, but this time they won't be toppled by it. And that's how this will be different now.
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Rick Olivares. I'm a writer and a teacher. First and foremost, congratulations. Thank you for the work that you do, all of you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. My question is, having lived in the United States for quite some time, I've had some friends who are part of gangs. My question is, I've seen some friends who go through similar programs, and the gangs that they came from would try to win them back. My question is, how do you deal with that? Because, when they lose a lot of members, they got to find ways to either replenish them or get them back, because it says they're doing something that's not right, that there's a better way. So that's the question. How do you fend off these gangs that try to win them back? Thank you.
What do your neighborhoods think about people moving away from having a life?
So, like example, me, I just came home from doing a nine-year term from prison, right? And majority of all my friends I grew up with. So, like I was telling you guys earlier, I just ran the streets, right? Ran the streets, and that was my way of living. And a job was not in my radar at all. I was not even worried about a job because I was too busy making money in the streets. So now that I'm home and I'm working and I got a job at Homeboy Industries, my friends, they respect me for that. And on that example, because now they're reaching out to me for a job. you know? So, you know, like it's maturity. We mature and we just push forward and we look at the bigger picture. We look at the bigger picture in life and we try to be successful. So I just believe in, like, if they're truly your friends, they're going to support you in any way you go.
– 22 years I did on this life term. Like I told you guys earlier, it was 6 years before that. I'm a camarada, I'm a sureño. I was very active. A lot of guys thought I was going to come home and just jump back here, I get into where I was at before and do the same thing I was doing in there. But my friends, you know, the people that, other lifers I was with in there, you know, they seen me coming out and doing the things I'm doing, and I got nothing but encouragement, you know? Like, hey, homeboy, if you could do it and you're doing all these things that you're doing, then maybe I could get on and I could do the same thing. So it gave, rather than have me come back, it gave those people hope. There's always going to be those people that want to draw you back and go to that old lifestyle again, because it's a security for them, you know. But there was a lot for myself. There was a lot more that were encouraging me to do better, because by me doing good, it gives them hope. And sometimes we're in there with no hope, you know. And like one of my friends that was a former lifer as well, before I came home, he said, hey, when word passed down that I had finally made it home, they were in shock. They were so in awe, like, what the heck? If he can make it home now, I know I got a chance, you know. But it inspired them, you know. So not necessarily everybody wants you to come back. A lot of people, they encourage it. If they really care about you or they want hope themselves, it's sort of like a guiding light to help them find their way too. Thank you.
Add one little thing. You know, so some of that is a mythic understanding that, you know, once you leave the gang, blood in, blood out, we're going to have to kill you now because you're working at Homeboy. Obviously, for 36 years, this has not been an issue. It's a little bit more akin to like a heroin addict who's still actively shooting up and runs into somebody who used to shoot up with them. But she's just come out of rehab, and she's been in recovery now for 6 months. And so the person who's still using is saying, hey, good for you. I'm not ready for that yet, but I'm happy for you. It's more akin to that, you know. But it's just a real quick, you know, they're kind of three little buckets, you know, of kids who join gangs. There's the despondent kid who can't imagine tomorrow, and that's kind of the more pervasive one. And then there's the traumatized kid who can't see his way clear to transform his pain, so he keeps transmitting it. And then there's the mentally ill kid. And so as a society, what would we do if we wanted to help kids not engage in criminal activity and gang involvement? Well, we'd infuse hope to kids for whom hope is foreign. We'd help heal a wound rather than keep punishing it and sending people to prison. And then we would deliver mental health services in a timely and culturally appropriate way. That's true for kids who we'd want to keep from joining a gang. But it's equally true for folks returning from prison or walking through our doors. Some are, you know, despondent, or some are really traumatized. And some, you know, have real mental health issues. So our response is the same, you know, to each. And it's all about healing. And it's the cultura that cura, you know, it's the culture that heals. And so that's what you want to create, a community of cherished belonging where everybody feels connected to each other. And this is a kind of a recipe, I think. And I always call it God's dream come true that happens. And as you mentioned, you know, enemies, rivals, working side by side, making bread or whatever. And they end up having a bond that's deeper and a union that's more full than even their neighborhoods or even their families.
Yes, please.
Hello? Okay, now it works. Hi, I'm Sophia. So I actually studied in LA Free University and first heard about Homeboy when I attended a talk by homegirl Joanna, who I believe is now going to law school. But anyways, I've been following Homeboy ever since attending her talk. So my question is actually to any takers here. So how do you show compassion for yourself, having dealt with the deaths of so many homies and carry deep burdens? How do you reconcile with grief and senseless deaths in a world with so much injustice today?
It's not always easy. Even after a year and a half, there's the struggles, there's a lot of guilt, thinking of all those times, I was unable to grieve for my family that died. So many, not being there for my kids when they're going through their issues, and two of my children almost committed suicide. And all I could do is go to my cell and lay down, because you always had to have that face, And as soon as you walk out the door, I had to put that smile back on and greet the guy just like I did. I always did, because each one of us all of us had our own problems. There was a time I went to yard, and one of the guys was upset because of his girlfriend. So he went to go shake his hand, and the other guy that just lost his girlfriend, he told me, he said, "Good morning." He said, "What's so good about it?" When he walked away, they started scolding him. I said, "Hey, Holmes, you ever crying about your girlfriend? This guy just lost his mother." It's like, the guy felt so humiliated and embarrassed that, my God, he said, "Hey, man, we all had to put on that face." But, what I'm saying is that we can never, there's so much we held in, And now that I'm home, it's hard to express it. It's hard to let all that stuff out. And I'm barely now just, starting to get through the cracks and stuff, It's the things I do now, like I said, man, I can't even begin to tell you, man, working with these kids, man, it's a healing thing for me, because now all the things I held in, I'm able to open up and share this stuff with them. And with each story I tell them, it's an enlightening moment for them. Because it's so funny, man, because, we grow and learn every day. We never know everything, right? Every day is a new experience. Every day is something new. But when I hear these stories, oh my God, I've been through this. I've been there. I've done that, And I'm able to share my experiences, and it's sort of like a therapy for me, where I can reflect on, a lot of time in those cells, I just, I go over my set, over all these things in my life that led me to where I was at, and help me gain a better insight, help me get a different kind of perspective on my life. But sharing these moments with them, I'm letting out the things that I was never able to and share inside where I was at, because you don't share everything you have, you keep it in. Yeah. You always have that little wall, But this has been my healing process for me. For every individual, it may be something different. It could be talking to a therapist, or maybe their wife, or whatever it may be. But for me, this has been so healing for me. That's why it's so important to me. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
For me, grieving. At first, losing friends growing up, it will hurt. And I'll sit back and I'll look at their family members, my family members, crying, and I will tell myself, man, I could sit here and cry with them, or I could be there and support them, Instead of me just being there crying, I could be there and support them. A prime example, my grandpa, my best friend just died. He died. 2 weeks later, my grandpa died. And then 3 weeks later, my dad died, back to back to back. And then I went to prison. In 1 month, all that happened, And so I did 6 months in Mexico, and not once did I cry, because I had to be strong. And I told myself, I cannot show weakness, because when I go home and I sit there and cry and cry and cry, my kids are going to see me crying, and guess what they're going to do? Cry, cry, cry. So me, since they don't have a grandpa or a dad, I don't have a grandpa or a dad, and they don't have a grandpa as well, or a great-grandpa, I'm their male figure now in their life. So I gotta be strong. So I gotta keep my head up high and be strong for my family, my kids. That's the way I deal with it. And for family members or my friends' family, I'm there and I support them, you know, and as much as I can. They lost their son, it's hard. When you lose someone, it's really hard. Just support the family, support your family, and be strong about it.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Pamela Mejia, and I'm a fashion entrepreneur. Before I ask my question, I would actually like to share a short story. You see, 10 years ago, I was a college student, a third-year college student, studying clothing technology or fashion at the University of the Philippines, which is a university right beside us. My professor required us to read this book called Just Fashion, Critical Cases of Social Justice in Fashion. And I remember chapter 1, the third case study was entitled Jobs, Not Jails. And that's how I got to know about Homeboy Industries. And your story impacted me so much that my thesis ended up becoming about a study on fashion social enterprises in the Philippines. And 10 years later, I am a fashion social entrepreneur myself because that story really impacted me so much that right now my social enterprise, what we do is we turn plastic waste into beads and we turn the beads into bags, like this one. And then these bags are made by women prisoners of Quezon City Jail. So it's such a full circle moment for me to be here because you guys have impacted me so much. So if you're wondering, like, I know the impact of Homeboys is directed to the homies, but 10 years ago, 7,000 miles away, you've impacted a girl in me. My question is, our problem with our beaters, so right now we're working with 25 women prisoners for my brand. In the last 2 years, we had 2 prisoners who went out. But the problem is one of our prisoners, Ateneo, she actually went back 3 weeks right after she went out. So my question is, what do you think are the best practices of Homeboy Industries when it comes to re-entry to the society? Like, how do we actually avoid these women to go back to their old ways? Like, most of our women beaters and prisoners were from drug-related cases. So our brand would really like to know how we can help these women in re-entering the society so that they won't come back inside. Thank you.
Okay, so when I did my 9-year term, right before I paroled, there's this program called the Men's Community Reentry Program, which means that you do the rest of your, so let's just say I have 24 months to the house, right? I parole in 24 months. Instead of me being in prison, they'll send you to this Men's Community Reentry Program. They'll put an ankle monitor on you. And there, they help you transition back into society. They help you with a job. So you go to work, you come back, they have a savings there, you save your money. So now that so that helps you, because if you just parole to the streets, they're just gonna give you $200, which is game money. And like Larry said, he just did 22 years. With $200, what are you gonna do? You're not gonna do nothing. So that Men's Community Reentry Program really helps. I did 11 months and I paroled with over $10,000 because I used to work, and they save your check. They'll feed you, they'll sack lunch, breakfast, sack lunches for work, and dinner when you get back. So that's what I recommend. Look into opening a reentry program just to help them transition back into society instead of just throwing them out in the street and having to figure it out.
Thank
you. That was excellent, by the way. I just feel like that the whole full circle in your eloquence, and I applaud you in your endeavor. But you know, you need a place, it seems to me, that will receive them. And a lot of times we're always talking about delivering services, like delivering wraparound services even. But, creating a wraparound place is more sure, I think. So then you're creating a community that really welcomes them, that really sees them, that really listens to them. And then people will know how to value themselves and others if there are folks around valuing them. And that, in the end, is sustaining. But like we always say, you have to walk through, I talk about the swinging of the doors. You have to come into the place. We don't go out and recruit or cajole or convince. You have to walk in. And then who's there? Well, it's like any kind of recovery AA meeting. You know, who's at an AA meeting? Somebody who's 20 years sober, somebody who's 20 minutes sober, and somebody who's drunk, but they're there. That's who we have at Homeboy. And so it's a kind of a mix. So the folks who are more years sober, if you will, know how to put their arm around somebody and say, hey, here, we don't trip about somebody's, what neighborhood they're from, you know? Or they kind of give them glachas, these guys would say. They would school them. The other thing I want to mention is in 1988, when we started this, 95% of gang members were male. So it wouldn't have occurred to anybody in those days to say, let's start Homeboy/Homegirl Industries. It wouldn't have occurred to anybody because only 5% of gang members were female. Cut to 36 years later, maybe 3% of gang members are female. But it's untenable to run an organization where there are no females. So we changed somewhere early on where we said, formerly gang involved or previously incarcerated. So like Joanna Carvajal, who you mentioned over here, she was a gang member. But that was kind of a rare bird, you know. But all the women there, and it's kind of 50-50 at this point, all the women are felons, just like the beaters who you deal with, you know. And, but, you know, folks are, females have suffered so much if they've gone through the carceral system. And a statistic I read the other day, 73% of female heroin addicts have all been sexually abused. 73%. So in one sense, there's a logic to it. On the other sense, there's a high degree of reverence for how complex things can be and how you have to really not just deliver services, but really hold people and remind people of their truth.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yes, please.
Hello. I'll bring this up a bit. My name is Seb Salud, and I just want to thank all three of you for coming here and sharing your wisdom. It's been such a tremendous morning for me, a learning experience. I love your model of expanding the circle of kinship, right? And as much as possible so that everyone's inside the circle. For me, though, I have problems with sometimes the very center of that circle. Sometimes it's hardest to show that compassion and unconditional love for those who are actually closest to you, right? Who may have that responsibility for you and who may have wronged you as well, be that a partner, a parent, a sibling. So I would just love to hear your thoughts about how you think about that part of the circle, the center of it, that may actually be the hardest sometimes.
I'm not sure if I understood it exactly right. When I came home, everybody was so surprised, because we never expected me to come home. Usually when you got life, that was it. It was over, you know. Fortunately, things changed for a little bit, and the laws changed and everything. When I came home, all my intentions were to do right? But it wasn't so much me not wanting to do right, but the expectations everyone had on me put a lot of pressure on me, and it was stressing me out to the point that I came close to going back to where I was at, you know? And it wasn't because out of anger or revenge that I wanted to do it. It was, a lot of times, we have a habit, like, to go to the place that's more comfortable for us, you know? And those are the old things, you know, that you felt more like secure, whatever it may be. Sometimes, you know, the best you could do is, as hard as it may be, is have compassion and faith and just be there for them, you know? Like the lady was talking about the purse. I wasn't to say something, but before the 22 years, I had did 6 years. And when I came home, all my tests were good. I started work. I got my ID the next day. I started work the day after that, and everything was going good. But then I felt so overwhelmed with everything. Like now I had responsibilities. Instead of going to the store once a month and packages, now I had to pay bills, car payments, rent. The responsibility all of us have when we're out here, right? But then the pressures of raising my kids, because my wife at the time, she had left me. You know, she had left me, had kids with some other guy. So when I came home, mom would never take care of my kids, and all that responsibility fell on me. So not only did I have the bills, I had to take care of 3 small kids. And, you know, then I had to live in my dad's house when I had to live under his rules. And, you know, sometimes they were so used to me being gone that I was feeling overwhelmed with everything. I was getting bombarded, you know. It's good to have a good support group, man. People that are not going to judge you. People that, like, maybe if you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe ask somebody for help. Like, hey, you know, somebody that a little more sympathetic that can understand and relate to what he's going through, or that family member, or whoever it may be. Because sometimes that's all you need, is that support. A lot of times when we don't have that support, or we don't have those people to relate to or to talk to, no matter if it's just 1 or 2 priests, it could be your priest, it could be an old friend or whatever it may be, but a lot of times, people go to that comfortable spot again, and it's such a slippery slope, you know, because like for myself, go have a couple of beers with the guys, I'd be okay, you know, I feel a little more comfortable, let some of my stress out. But what happened, I ended up in the middle of everything all over again. Before I didn't even realize it, so I was like, how did I get back here? You know? It's not always, especially for our family members, because we always have more expectations for them. They're my brother, they were better than that. But remember, Ray, like, you know, sometimes it's a struggle just to get to where we're at. And that support and that patience goes such a long ways. I can't even begin to tell you, you know. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, talk to somebody about it. You know, get that encouragement. Maybe you need that encouragement too. Maybe you need that person to talk to share with, so you don't feel overwhelmed or taking on the other person that you have those expectations of. Because not all of us need an outlet. All of us need a little place where we could go and find that peace.
Just that was an excellent question and comment. You know, that it is the kind of sort of feels like clearer. Not, I don't want to say easier, but yeah, the margins. But there are these folks who are close to you, and the kind of the thing that creates this equal baseline, it seems to me. I was speaking once at on a panel with a rabbi and a columnist from the LA Times, and packed auditorium, and I don't know what we were talking about, but I said there are 2 pervasive principles, controlling principles really at Homeboy, that we all embrace. Everyone is unshakably good, no exceptions. And we belong to each other, no exceptions. And then I said, now, do I think that every complex, vexing social dilemma that faces us would dissipate if we embrace those 2 principles? Yes, I do. Well, the entire audience burst into laughter, which startled me. And then when the laughter subsided, I said, yes, I do. And yes, I do. And that's the equalizer in terms of folks at the margins or folks at the center. You know, parents or partner, you said, or friend, or the difficulty there is there as opposed to the folks on the margins. But the equalizer is everybody's unshakably good, and we belong to each other. If that's where you begin, then you can roll up your sleeves. And cherishing is love with its sleeves rolled up. And the more it's sort of seeing kind of with the lens of God, you know. And that's the goal, is to be able to see as God does, and to see the folks at the center closest to us in the same way we're seeing folks who are at the margins, that it's kind of bringing us all together. So people have a hard time with that because we don't believe that we're unshakably good, and we know all sorts of people who we think definitely are not unshakably good. And yet, but if that's the truth of a human being, then working with gang members for 40 years has taught me that. You know, I've never met an evil person, ever. Yeah, I've met people who were despondent or traumatized or mentally ill. I've met people who are in pain and exceedingly wounded, but I've never met anybody evil. So watching the blindfold fall, and then you recognize your goodness is, you know, that's kind of the common thread for all human beings, is that we're good, but we lose sight that we're good. It doesn't mean sometimes we're good and sometimes we're bad, or we got some goodness in us. No, your truth is unshakable goodness. Now, coming to see that and recognizing your truth, then you can let love live through you. And then you can live from your truth, and that's where the joy is. So the hope isn't to like make productive citizens. The idea is once you know your truth, then you'll know where the joy is located, and then you can live at that place with the folks at the center, as you say, or the folks at the margins as well.
Thank you.
I've just been told that we have limited time, so your question and then your question.
Okay. Hello. I'm Clarice Sanchez Meneses. Just firstly, I just want to say thank you for coming all the way here to share your stories. They mean a lot to me. I have one question for Larry and Enrique and one question for Father Greg. You can answer in any order. My question for Larry and Enrique is, I guess, what was the moment when you realized that Homeboy Industries was home for you? Like that this is where you belonged? And for Father Greg, I'm guessing, I think also from what you said, that your vision or the principles that you decided on for Homeboy Industries was developed. They didn't necessarily come in an epiphany, something that you learned throughout. Could you tell about when you understood this is what you want Homeboy Industries to be, that you wanted it to be a place of belonging, and of seeing people's unshakable goodness? Like, what was the moment when you realized this is what this place will be? That makes sense. So yes.
So me, the moment I knew Homeboy Industries was my home was, remember I told you guys I picked up a 9-year term, and right before I turned myself in, they let me know, once you come out, once you parole, you have a job here. So they had sent me to that men's community reentry program, MCRP, like I was talking about. And guess where I went to go work at? Homeboy Industries, because I knew I had a job there. And I have not left there ever since, because they promised me a job when I came home. They welcomed me back as soon as I got out, and I'm there living the best life ever because no one judges me. I'm able to hang out with people that I grew up with, people that I was in prison with, people that are all doing the same thing I'm doing. They're all there for the same purpose. So that's when I found Homeboys was my home, because they never closed the doors on me.
For me, it was something similar. Before I came home, I was taking a lot of self-help class, trying to prepare my way for board and court to come back home. So I started a correspondence with one, Steve Avilos, for gang, what was it, Gangs Anonymous, Criminal Gangs Anonymous. And the time he took to do that was his own time, because it wasn't required, you know. And, you know, I came home, and just like you walk to New York in a prison, you know, you sit back and just, you know, scope it out to see what's going on. But, you know, sure enough, like he said, there was people, I seen old friends there, you know, and the welcome I got, man, it was just with smiles and handshakes, and they embraced me, you know, and I felt like I was, home, and like it was just such a warm welcome. But it wasn't just like a phase. The next day was the same. The day after that was the same, and it just felt right for me, and I was just thankful to be there, and after, like I said, prior to the life sentence, I did the 6 years, and that's why I went back to the street, because I wanted to go somewhere where I felt I could talk to people, I could, be at peace, and relate. There were people that relate to me, And when I went to Homeboys, I didn't have to go back to the barrio. I didn't have to go back to the gang. Because all the things I was, the camaraderie I had in prison, the thing I was looking for on the streets, it was all here, but people on the same purpose wanted to do good. People to encourage you to move forward and want to change your life. The same thing I wanted, So instead of going back to a native, I had a positive place to go, and with the encouragement and support that I hungered for. So, again, I was very grateful to be where I was at, and that place always found my solace.
Yeah, nothing was once and for all. There was always an evolution and a growing understanding of what we were doing. What are we doing? What do we think we're doing? And so, like in the early days, I used to do hardcore gang intervention, peace treaties, truces, ceasefires. And I don't regret that I did any of that. I'd never do it again, because I saw that it served the cohesion of the gang. It supplied oxygen to gangs. So I stopped doing it. And then, when you listen to gang members, they say, if only we had a job. Okay, jobs, and we try to get employers. And so I don't regret doing that, but I'd never do that again in terms of it being job-centric. So then we went, no, this is about healing. So we've evolved all the way through, because we were seeing guys who we'd found jobs for, and we got them careers, and then the next thing, his lady leaves him, and he unravels, and now he's doing 175 years to life at Folsom Prison. That's the guy I have in mind. So it's like, and it's only because we never even offered healing. We thought a job will do it, because we listened to gang members and they said job. But once you knew gang members, oh no, healing. So we've evolved at, we have an 18-month training. Before, homies could stay forever. Leave when you're ready. But now we say, you got to leave because we need room, So it's 18 months. And then somebody said, well, because we thought 2 years is too long, 1 year is too short, 18 months. And then later on, we discovered that, 18 months is the time it takes for an infant to attach to the caregiver. We go, perfect. We've applied that principle, even though it was retroactive. So anyway, you're always trying to evolve. And people come in now to our headquarters, which is quite huge, and says, wow, how'd you think this up? And the truth is, nobody thinks anything up, You kind of, okay, let's add this. We think we need that, and that's not working, get rid of that. So that's kind of the evolution always, to this day, is still happening.
Okay, so it's listening and knowing them. Yes, thank you so much, for all of you.
So we have a last question, and then I'll give Father Greg some time to kind of bring us all back, maybe something short.
I'd like to thank the three of you, Father G, Larry, and Enrique, for having come here. What I'm taking away, just even from your last responses, is how healing can lead to hope. Because that's what I think many people here, we're not from a context of where Enrique and Larry are, but we're also trying to find hope. And Father G has basically said the way you can bring people to hope is to help them to heal. So my two questions are this. For Larry and Enrique, you both are parents right now. what do you say to your children, or I don't know if you have grandchildren, to help them heal from whatever they're traumatized from, and to give them hope so that they don't do what the rest of their friends are doing, and what you have experienced is a better way to move forward? That's my question to the two of you. And Father, you're talking about healing to hope. When do you know that you have given them enough hope, or given them enough healing to hope? What's a rule of thumb that you're doing when you're interacting with someone that tells you, okay, I've listened enough, I've respected him enough, I can see that he's beginning to have hope in his future, so that we can let him go because he is on his way? That's it.
For me, when after I got my life, like I told you earlier, I came from a family that was generational gang members, cousins, aunts, uncles, my siblings. It was just expected, like, these guys are from the neighborhood, they're from the barrio, you know. But when I got my life sentence, it was a catalyst in our lives, because my mom and dad said, you know what, that's it. You know, we sacrificed enough for this, man. So they got even though they got my kids, they moved to a different city outside the area. And you know, no matter where you go, if you're looking for it, you're gonna find it. But they didn't have nobody in influence. They didn't have the cousins. They didn't have the friends of the homeboys to, hey, I know your dad. He grew up with us doing this and that. And that's what happened. You start to romanticize it. And the kids want to be just who their heroes, but their parents, right? So they, you know, more likely they're going to follow those footsteps. But my mom and dad moving away, even though that place was gang infested as well, they didn't have the outside influences that we grew up with. So they became successful. My daughter works for the courts. My other daughter's a firefighter, and my son joined the Army. They broke the cycle. And my cousins, seeing what happened, they decided to do the same thing and move out. So our kids, my cousins, my cousins' kids, my other relatives that moved away, our kids don't even know what it is to be a gamer. They don't know nothing about it. They're squares. They're just like regular people, you know. The only thing, I couldn't be there for my kids the way I wish I could have been, but I did everything I could to give them the advice so they wouldn't follow that path, about having respect for themselves and other people, trying to give them the best advice I could give. My mom and dad, I came from a loving family. You know, there was always love in our house, you know. Never went without a roof over my head or food on the table. You know, like I said earlier, for us, it was more of a tribal thing. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't wait to see one of the guys be out there in the streets, out there hearing all their stories and, you know, their victories or whatever it may be, you know. But, you know, I don't want to put that on my kids. My kids are just about wanting to feed them positive stuff. I wanted them to be better than I could ever be, you know. As I'm sure all of you guys know, man, you know, you want your family to grow, you know. Hey, I was here, but I want my kids to be here, you know. We always want better for our family. That's our goal, right? That's our heart, you know. And everything I possibly do, man, it was always to feed them the advice to be better. My relationship with my son, I still haven't talked to him. There's still a lot of anger there. My daughter, the oldest one, like, you know, we're great. And my youngest one, we have a relationship. But before we got to where we're at, it was really hard because they had a lot of things pent up inside. And I'll tell you, man, like, the truth cuts deeper than anything. And a lot of times, the conversation we had, it hurt. You know, I mean, to the point, like, it's like, it was a knife in my heart. But, like, they needed to vent it out. They needed to get to where we're at now. They needed to heal. I didn't just have to heal, but they had to heal themselves. So they needed that, you know, and I needed to understand that too, you know. Right now, my daughter, she told me, Dad, you can't be there for me. It's too late, like, in a way I wanted you to be because I'm too old now. But since I got my son, you know, be the grandfather and father that I wish you were to me, and be there for him, you know. And I've been doing everything I can to do that, to, you know, fulfill that, you know, that not an obligation, because I love my grandson. You know, he's an inspiration for me. He inspires me to want to be better. Whether it be jumping on a trampoline or being goofy or whatever it may be, you know. I love it, you know. But it's just, you know, I can tell them sorry till you know, till I die. But it's not the words; those are just words, you know. So the best thing I do for them is like show them through my actions that I am trying to be the best I can be for them. And so far, so good.
For myself, I had a 9-year term, and out of those 9 years, I did 7 years. I left my daughter at 3 years old and my son at 1 year. And the mother of my kids took my kids every weekend to go visit me, just so my kids could be part of my life. Even if it was just for a couple hours, she would be there every weekend with my kids. I watched my kids grow for 7 years in the system. I came home, and it was difficult. It was difficult to tell my kids anything because my daughter would tell me, how you want me to do good if you never did good? You're in prison this whole time. I said, how was I gonna argue that? There was no way to argue that. So what I did was, okay, now I need to be that example. So I got a job, I work at Homeboys, and I would wake up every morning. And she'll see me, and once in a while I'll stay home and do online classes. And I did all, and I would tell her, look, I'm doing it, you gotta do it. And there was no argument there no more because she seen me do it, you know? And you just gotta be that prime example, you know? And it helps too when you move out of the community you grew up in. Have a lot of family that's from the same gang where I grew up at, and they all live in the same area, but we moved out, we bought a house a couple miles south from where I grew up at, and now my kids go to school out there. And one thing that I always tell my kids is, if you continue to look back, you're gonna trip walking forward. You know, you have a bright future ahead of you. And you have a mother and father that's here to support you.
I'll just wrap it up here because we got to that moment. So Ram Dass says that we're all just walking each other home. And that's all we do is walk each other home to wholeness and to health and to well-being and to want well-being for each other. And holy people are healthy people, and healthy people are holy people. And so our hope is that we're in this together. The poet Emily Dickinson says, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, that sings the song without the words and never stops at all. And so singing the song without the words is what we're all invited to do. So my prayer for you is that you may continue to sing the song without the words, and may you never stop at all. Thank you all very much.
So let's all thank Father Greg, Enrique, Larry, for coming all this way to share their stories with us. I'm told there are a few photos that need to be taken. So does anybody know how these photos go? So this is a very Filipino thing where everything has to be photographed multiple times. I just obey.
So we'll have 2 photos taken this morning. One with Father Greg, the homies Enrico on top of the stage, okay? And you will be all asked to stand up so you could be seen. The photographer will be here at the backstage. The second photo, Father Greg and the homies Enrico will go down. They will be seated, and then you be seated as well, but we would like to ask the people on the side to compress or to take seats in the center so that all of us will be included in the picture, okay? So let's do the first photo now.